Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to tackle a question that I'm sure has crossed your mind at least once, probably while staring at your work computer. You know the feeling. Why are you stuck using that clunky spreadsheet program or that messaging app nobody's ever heard of? It might seem totally random, but trust me, there's actually a very deliberate, thought-out process behind it all. To really get the answer, we have to rewind the clock, all the way back to the 1980s. This was basically tech's Wild West era, a chaotic free-for-all where every new computer was like its own little isolated island. I want you to imagine an office where a document you made on your computer couldn't be opened on the computer right next to you. No joke, that was the reality. This massive incompatibility created an absolute logistical nightmare. It drove up costs for, well, everything, from repairs and training to just basic IT support. It was completely unsustainable. So out of all that frustration, a really simple but powerful idea started to take hold: standardization. Businesses finally realized they had to pick a side, choose a limited set of hardware and software just to get things done without pulling their hair out. And this move towards standardization, it wasn't just some passing trend. Oh no, it became a formal strategy. Organizations started building actual systems to try and tame that technological chaos once and for all. The solution? They created official product standards. The easiest way to think about this is like a company's approved tech catalog. This list dictates what everybody uses, and the whole point is to make sure everything works together, to control costs, and to make sure it all just works. This, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. With literally thousands of products out there, how in the world does a company actually decide what makes the cut and gets on that approved list? Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to open up the toolkit that organizations use to systematically evaluate all this technology and, separate the real contenders from the pretenders. So at its core, the whole process is this pretty logical three-step journey. First, they gather all the info they can find. Then they put the competing products to the test. And finally, they use all that data to make a really informed choice. Makes sense, right? Now, a really common first approach is often just taking the path of least resistance. You just adopt what's already a market leader or a bestseller. The thinking is pretty simple. Hey, if everyone else is using it, it must be a pretty safe bet. But here's the thing. Industry standard isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. A small business, for example, might find that a tool like QuickBooks is absolutely perfect for their needs. But a massive global corporation, they're going to need something way more specialized, way more powerful, often something that's custom-built just for them. So what if you need a more objective way to measure things? Well, that's where something called a benchmark comes in. Think of it like a head-to-head scientific test. So if you're comparing two printers, for instance, you'd use the exact same computer, the same software, even the same paper, to see which one is truly faster. It's all about removing any bias. Okay, now this next tool is really interesting because it's all about turning subjective opinions into cold, hard, objective data. It's called the weighted point evaluation method, and it is a super powerful way to make a fair decision. So here's how it works. First, the team sits down and decides what criteria actually matter the most to them. Things like features, ease of use, maybe vendor support, or cost. And then they assign each of those a weight based on how important it is. After that, they score each product on every single one of those criteria. And then the math happens. Let's take product B from our last slide. You multiply its score for ease of use, which was 90, by its 25% weight. You do that for every single category, add it all up, and voila! In this showdown, product B wins with a final score of 82.25. This method forces a decision based on those predefined priorities, not just on someone's gut feeling. So a decision has been made, the winner has been chosen, but the work is far from over. Now comes what can honestly be the hardest part: getting everybody in the company to actually use the new tech. A huge hurdle is just human nature. People get comfortable. They get used to the tools they know and use every single day. And trying to force them to change can be met with some serious resistance, which is summed up perfectly by this classic saying. This creates some really tough trade-offs for organizations. Take the decision a lot of companies faced back around 2013. Should we upgrade to Windows 8? On one hand, yeah, it offered new features, better security. But on the other hand, the conversion costs were huge, and a lot of users really disliked the new interface. It was a classic battle between progress and practicality. Now, this whole process, it might seem like a relic from a totally different era of computing, right? But in today's world of endless apps and cloud services, these core principles, evaluation and standardization, they're actually more critical than ever. Today, companies are using these exact same methodical approaches to make enormous bets on the future. Choosing an AI platform or a 5G provider, that's not just some IT decision anymore. It's a strategic choice that could define a company for the next decade. The stakes are way, way higher, so the process has to be even smarter. And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. The whole original goal was to create order by making everyone use the same thing. But now, in a world of remote work and specialized tools where employees want to choose what works best for them, does that top-down approach still make sense? Or are we maybe seeing a new, more flexible kind of Wild West on the horizon?